Aburo Boya Boshishe and Ekabo, welcome. And Atupue for being here. Just wanted to create a small presentation on how to use the Odu A book. I am Yalosha Oshunyemi. Wanted to go ahead and drop some few nuggets of wisdom in order to use this reference. So we'll go ahead and get started. Here it is, Odu A. So the purpose of this workbook is enhancing memorization techniques, making associations, and using modern tools to create a consistent schedule in order to divine. So this is really targeted for the people in the diaspora not born into the culture. I think that it is time that we use modern tools in order to help assist where places could become a little bit more consistent, especially in terms of creating your own process for memorizing the just body and the breadth of the Odus system. So the reason why we define. So, here we are, who, what, when, why, how. So like, who do we divine to? So really it's for anyone who is a devotee or anyone who is part of the religion who wishes to connect to ancestors, Orisha, and Olodumare. Of course, for the purposes of this presentation and book, it doesn't go into the initiatory processes, but it does reflect the fact that you can have certain abilities to connect in, even with your egun, with your ancestors. And this is really the building blocks and the bones of how that gets started. So that's really who we divine to, what we divine using the original binary code system that corresponds to these Odu oracles. And there's 256 specifically. And that's just a lot of memorization if you don't have a direct godparent really carving the way and teaching you daily. Because, in the diaspora, we have different lives that are separate from the mainland and even from the culture at times. So it's important to create your own consistent schedule in order to connect in with the culture. When is really the time, anytime we need to communicate and obtain answers from the spiritual realm. The why is the eventuality of bringing people back into their path of their highest destiny. Also, the why is just for regular questions that we have throughout our day when we need to consult an ancestor who has gone through a similar experience. So it's really available for us to pierce the veil into the spiritual realm and ask these questions and get definitive answers. The how is the divination comes from the skill of the diviner and the internal trust required that is to understand these encoded messages. It's through repetition and observable patterns that we're able to create a system of understanding. So next we have the privilege of divining comes from your elders. So we have, again, the Egun or the Egbe, your societies or your specific ancestors that we are communicating with. In Isheshe, we have your Oluwo or your Ojibona, and we have, definite hierarchical structures within the religion, but these are your most immediate godparents who will be able to assist you with the days in and days out of your ritual work. And they're really the ones to inform you of your process specific to your ile or your house. And then in Lukumi, of course, we have padrino and madrinas, and that's also a hierarchical structure of your first and your second godparent. So really, it is through the lineage of the priests that came before us, traced all the way back to the original Orisha. The tools that are needed are the accountability buddy, of course, permission from elders, learning your gateway phrases, especially as it relates to your ile specifically, casting tools. So here's where we get into, different higher levels of divination and tools. So we have your OB, your Merindilogun or your cowrie shells, your Iking, your Opuele, and of course your Oponifa. We definitely need that omitutu, cascarilla, iriosun, cigar, the old tea and liquor, and a clean, quiet space. So, this is just really a petition for you guys to just really give yourselves the best part of success, right? So, avoiding any known pitfalls and distractions. When we know better, we definitely do better. So, here it clearly states asking permission to receive readings from others, asking permission to give readings and opinions, especially without authority. So, this is like unsolicited advice or just the ability, as we dive deeper into knowing about our divination skills, just because we know doesn't mean that we should report out, right? Never giving yourself a formal reading. So, always communicating to others or asking the help of another priest to do a formal reading for you. This is different from speaking to your Orisha specifically. And, being emotionally and physically at center. So, these are just kind of some ideas about avoiding pitfalls. And, this is a plug for creating better habits. So know your habits, getting clear on the reality of your habits and not the ideals of your habits. So being really radically honest with yourself about how great your habits are or how much they kind of suck, right? So make a plan and stay on track. So this is where the accountability buddy really comes forward. So I wanted to kind of go into the different types of memory that are available to us and that have been studied, extensively through psychology. There's definitely episodic and semantic, procedural, short-term and working, sensory, and perspective. I've also attached the link here where I got most of this information if you're interested in going back and doing a little bit of research. So I wanted to go over these kind of really quickly to understand why using this workbook is so important in terms of your memory. So we have an episodic memory. So that's when a person recalls a particular event or episode in the past. So it's related kind of with this concept of an autobiography and like recalling parts of your life story. So, episodic memory includes remembering details of a phone number and how you felt during your last argument, what it was like receiving your high school diploma. So, semantic memory includes remembering what year it currently is, the capital of a foreign country, and the meaning of a slang term. So, it's basically like the it's the feeling part of memory of like playing the piano and things like that. So it's being able to like really understand that version of our memory. The procedural memory really is sitting on a bike after not riding for a few years. So that includes how to tie your shoes, how to send an email, how to shoot a basketball. Short term and working memory are mostly used interchangeably, and they're both referring to storage of information for a short period of time. So that is remembering the appearance of someone you met a minute ago, current temperature, what happened moments ago in a movie. And then we go into kind of this concept of working memory. Now, they are interchangeable, but it also includes remembering a number you've calculated as part of a mental math problem, a person named at the beginning of a sentence, and holding a concept in mind. So sensory, these are basically short-term sensory memories are what psychologists call the short-term memories of just experienced sensory stimuli, such as sights and sounds, right? So that's really about the piano note that was played, the appearance of a car that drove by, smell of the restaurant that you passed. And then the last memory center that we wanted to talk about was perspective. And that is forward thinking memory. And it really means recalling an intention from the past in order to do something in the future. So it includes remembering to call somebody back, stop at the drugstore, or pay the rent every month. So as you can see, there's lots of different types of memory, and it's important that we understand the different constructs of these memory pieces so that we can really help to infuse some help in the areas that we're not so great at. So the science behind writing it down, it's really the parts of the short-term or working memory that get converted to the long-term memory or the semantic. So writing it down is a sensory memory that aids in perspective memory function, remembering your own learning process, and the conversion of repetitive exposure to stimuli to semantic memory. So it converts it to long-term memory. So why I used the lunar cycle in order to reflect, those advantages in really measuring how well you've done within a 2-week period, give or take, is important for us to really know how well we're doing and what progress we have moving forward. So we have different phases of the moon that I just wanted to kind of go over. The new moon is where we can't see the moon when it's totally covered, right? But because the moon itself doesn't illuminate light, it is through the casting of the sun that projects how brightly lit the moon can be. The waxing crescent is in the northern hemisphere of the globe, and we see the waxing crescent phase as a thin crescent of light to the right. The first quarter, we see the first quarter phase as a half moon. And then the waxing gibbous is the waxing phase between half moon and full moon. So it's getting bigger. The full moon is we can completely see the illumination during full moon. So this is typical. We know what we're talking about when we say full moon. The waning gibbous is between a full moon and a half moon, and it's getting smaller. And then the third quarter, we see the third quarter is a half moon as well, and it is the opposite half as illuminated in the first quarter. Waning crescent is in the northern hemisphere. We see the waning crescent phase as a thin crescent of light to the left. So the moon displays these 8 phases, one after the other, as it moves through its cycle, and it takes about 27 days for the moon to orbit the Earth. This means the moon cycle is 28 days long. So on Earth, our view of the illuminated part of the moon changes each night, depending on where the moon is in its orbit or path around the Earth. So when we have a full view of the completely illuminated side of the moon, that phase is known as a full moon. So there are really ancient, typical schools that have followed the lunation cycle and really harnessed its power in terms of, the fullness of the moon, just archetypically meaning to shed anything that has been held, as well as the new moon is to manifest or to grow it again. So in this particular workbook, I broke it down into actually 16 different days because there's 16 of the original Odus, or, the parent Odus, so to speak. And that 16 is a very sacred number. So I broke it into 16 days, both for the new moon or full moon. And lastly, I just wanted to thank you guys for, really showing up and supporting and really being the own advocate for your best and highest self. So this really is a tribute to those in the diaspora who I know also are struggling with the same effects of trying to memorize parts of this system that can be really intimidating and daunting if we let it be. So with, the support of our Egun, with the support of all of our Egbe and our Orisha and Olodumare, I wish you blessings upon blessings of just joy and being able to really capture all of your Odu in your own way and in your own right. All right. Alafia and Adupwe.